It's great to see that stuff go up. I like,
Oh no.
shh, it's 6 o'clock.
Hear the mayor coming.
Huh?
Okay, said I can hear the mayor. Be cool.
Guess what?
That's
He's here now.
vacancy on the planning commission, Frank's out.
You guys have.
Alright, it's 6 o'clock. Hold on. We will call the meeting to order and I will ask staff to take a roll call. Thanks, Mayor. Mayor Devine.
Here.
Wayne Clark.
Yes.
Eric Torkelson.
Here.
Brian Frank.
Here.
Lisa Coons.
Here.
Kathleen Degenhardt.
Here.
David Roshka.
Here.
Brandon Reinke.
Here.
Jessica Katzenmeyer.
Here.
Full house.
All right, let's go to item C, approval of minutes from our July 24th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any changes, corrections, adjustments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. We will move to item D, and we'll take up items 2A and 2B, and I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor. This is for a certified survey map for North Shore Bank, conditional use permit, and site landscaping architectural plan review. Previously, earlier in the year, North Shore Bank came before us for a new branch location. On top of that existing branch location, they're moving out of this existing building towards this corner of the parking lot. Right now, the property is zoned C3. It's permitted by a neighborhood service use, but conditional use is required for the accessory drive-through utilized for the bank. The lot will be divided into 2 different lots via CSM. The proposed hours for the bank are 24/7 ATM. Video tellers, also known as ITM, are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., Saturday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Sunday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then the branch itself is open for 9 to 5 p.m., Monday through Thursday, and then open Friday and Saturday as well. The current parcel is 0.77 acres. They're proposing to divide that parcel into 2 different parcels just because 2 principal buildings cannot exist on the same lot. This is the site of the proposed building on that western parcel, and then on the east parcel is that existing 3-story office building. All buildings and both lots conform to the zoning requirements of the C3 district. Looking at the site plan, this is similar to what was submitted in earlier this year. No changes to that existing building on the site. They're proposing that branch location on that north west corner of Wildwood and National Avenue. 26 stalls are shown on that site, reducing it from the 38 that are existing right now. Access is proposed via off of a public alley on Wildwood Drive, and additionally, access is proposed off of a modified access on National Avenue. More about this access later. It was mentioned in the staff report. Within that parking lot, there is an ITM lane, an ATM lane underneath these canopies, pedestrian walkway towards National Avenue, and then a trash enclosure and transformer which is enclosed and screened on the rear southwest corner of the site. As you may know, in 2026, National Avenue is proposed to be reconstructed. This came kind of late in the project, and it's slightly altering some things. There's no longer going to be access off of National Avenue into Wildwood. This median will be closed due to traffic safety concerns. We met with the engineering team and North Shore Bank consultants on allowing the proposed driveway to exist. Previously, it was going to be removed as part of the reconstruction plans, but we met with the engineering team and R.A. Smith, the engineering consultant group, and they are allowing for the driveway on National Avenue to exist. This is subject to technical review by the engineering team to ensure that traffic safety exists, but this access will remain rather than being closed if there was any confusion within the staff report. Engineering also wants to look at reviewing a restriction of vehicles from exiting onto National Avenue and then turning left onto Cleveland Avenue. So that's something that they're going to look at and subject to technical review by them, by the engineering department. I'm looking at the landscaping plan. They have a variety of different landscaping along that entire site. Wrapping around the entire site is a mix of perennials, shrubs, and grasses. Landscaping is located in the islands as well, and it's screening the trash enclosure and transformers. If there are any street trees modified by the landscaping plan as the project progresses with the National Avenue reconstruction, Forestry just wants to ensure that the trees will survive and they'll be maintained. I'm looking at the architectural plan. This matches the existing North Shore Bank locations that have popped up throughout the Milwaukee Metro. They're in higher quality exterior materials showing cast stone primarily, along with metal wall paneling. There's an abundance of glazing shown on that front side facing National Avenue. This is the west, north, and east facades. This will be primarily visible by the public. And it'll directly look into the bank itself, providing some visual interest. There are matching ITM canopies to complement the proposed building. This utilizes the same cast stone. It's a good-looking building, and it's pretty high quality. Here's a rendering of the proposed building. With that being said, the design review guidelines, they're all met by this project, and it's overall just a high-quality project that meets our intentions for design review. We do have quite a bit of conditions, pretty standard. One is Common Council approval of the conditional use permit and certified survey map. A certified survey map being submitted by the consultants. A revised site plan showing that coordination of the driveway modifications along National Avenue subject to engineering approval. Along with details for a bike rack. One bike rack will be required for this property. We have additional details in the zoning code. Compliance with that city's forestry standards again, and then standard street excavation permit being pulled, along with signage plans being reviewed. With that being said, we have a recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. Do we have a question?
Mr. Mayor, I'd move approval.
Okay,
Second.
motion a second. Any discussion or questions? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Ayes have it, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Then we'll move on to items, that was A, B, and C, correct?
Yes.
So we'll move on to 3A.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm introducing a conditional use permit application and site landscape and architecture review for Angela's Little Angels. So just a brief overview. The location of this proposed use is going to be 1112 South 60th Street. The current zoning maintains a C3 status, so community commercial, with the previous use being artistic clay products. The proposed use of this specific building is for a group child care center. The building occupancy is the proposed owner is going to occupy the entire building, and there were some questions regarding the plan submitted. Given the size of the building, it was determined by our building inspectors that the building is less than 50,000 cubic feet, meaning that we do not require an architect or an engineer to draft the plans. However, we do have an additional permit that we'll be recommending at the end of this presentation. In terms of the facility details, we're looking at a Monday through Friday operation from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. for this use. And this daycare will serve children ages 6 weeks to 12 years in age. Meals will be catered through the SDC food program, and then additional meals will be supplemented by licensed chef Michael Little. And overall, right now they are looking at 3 full-time employees for this facility, but that could change depending on the number of applicants that they have for their facility. This is just what the front of the building looks like. I think it's really interesting seeing what these buildings look like as you walk through the street or walk through the neighborhood. I think it's just important to look at, as well as a couple of the temporary signs that the applicant did apply for that are already on the building, just advertising the service. Overall, she submitted a site plan indicating a 3,700 square foot first floor that include an indoor play area accommodating about 250 square feet, a library, a learning room, toddler, infant, and preschool rooms sectioned off, offices, as well as 2 restrooms. The basement of the building offers some additional space for programming and childcare services, a storage room, furnace room, and a kitchen area, though appliances are sparse in that area just because they're not making food on site. So they'll see likely a kitchen sink and then a refrigerator there. In terms of outdoor facilities, they are looking to accommodate a play area adjacent to a parking area that will be fenced in, and then a small staff parking lot to the east behind the building. This is what our applicant submitted for her first floor plan. So you can see here that the different rooms are going to be sectioned off by 4-foot-high dividers, accommodating all those little different uses within there, and that is the site plan she submitted for that first floor. Looking to the basement, that's going to be the general layout of the basement floor. In terms of landscaping and architectural details, we do not currently have a landscaping plan submitted by the applicant, so we'll continue to work with her just to get a general landscaping plan together, especially pertinent toward the back of the lot, as we weren't able to see the conditions back there. In terms of the building's exterior, she proposes no exterior renovations, and to note, no interior renovations either. To the left of the building, there is this driveway I have pictured right here, which is 8.3 feet wide, and that's going to be the place for pickup and drop-off operations. It was noted by one of our city engineers that this is a somewhat small access way, only permitting likely 1 vehicle at a time. In terms of fencing on the site, there is an existing 5-foot-high chain link fence along the back of the lot, as well as some proposed additional fencing to extend and enclose that play area from the parking lot. In terms of signage, Angela has already submitted a temporary sign plan with permanent signage and a lighting plan pending submission. And here is just the site plan she submitted for the outdoor areas in relation to the building itself and the driveway. For our recommendation, we do recommend approval for the conditional use permit subject to the following conditions. So we'd really like to have our applicant confirm the existing and proposed landscaping and screening efforts through the submission of a detailed landscaping plan, as well as just the location of her refuse container, as well as a 4-sided screening detail being shown on the site plan. In addition to this, we would like the applicant to propose a signage and lighting plan subject to planning design review. And lastly, that condition I said that we'd wrap around back to, we would like for the applicant to apply for a change of use submittal to be reviewed and approved by the Code Enforcement Department. So that was just outlined by Robert Woodard, one of our code enforcement inspectors. who stated that because of the size of the building, she does not need to have those engineer or architecturally drawn plans, but rather just apply for that change of use so we can see what's different within the context of the building and how that lines up with the proposed use of the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, I just had a
Go
question.
there.
Is there gonna be any like security cameras put on site for this?
We did
building?
not get a security camera plan, though we did get like her fire alarm systems indicated through the building. I'm not sure if that is typically a requirement for a daycare use or if that's common.
I believe per the Department of Children and Families, I think it's a state requirement
Okay.
that might not be within the city, just because all of our daycare uses are linked to the state code. So
Yeah.
I assume that, but we can confirm that with the applicant too.
Okay. And then just one other thing, when I was going over the staff report, I noticed that, you know, there was a comment about that the meals will be through a social development commission.
Yes.
So does that mean that there are then income limitations on on like with the children going there, or is it open to anybody with children of any?
The applicant didn't mention any income-specific requirements for attending her proposed use. She didn't mention that, and I'm not honestly the most familiar with the SDC program.
Oh,
Oh,
just gonna
hey, sorry, you snuck in, Angela. Hello, this is the applicant here.
hello.
bring it out.
As far as the SDC meals, I was with the program before, with my children. It's for any kid.
Okay, it doesn't matter regardless, okay.
And they go by capacity, so if I contact them, let them know we only have probably like 12 kids, that's how much they're provided for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Is SDC still operating?
Hmm?
I thought they
Yeah.
closed the West Dallas office.
Oh, I don't know, I was using one of my cabinets.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask if you could go back to the basement.
Absolutely. Oh, that one.
There, in the bottom,
Yes.
kind of centered a little bit to the right, is that another exit?
Yes,
Okay.
by the steps, going towards the steps.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Wait,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Did you say that the alley is where the pickup and drop-off will occur?
Yeah, it's not really an alleyway as much as it is a driveway. That is the look of it back there. There's like a small lot right at the very end of the driveway and then like a little grassy area to the right of that.
So this is off the street, correct?
Correct.
And cars will go just the one direction? Up that alley, up that street, up the whatever it is?
To get, or do they have to turn around in the parking lot to go back out?
I guess
Yeah, they
it's,
would have to turn around.
okay.
And they come out the same way?
Yeah.
So, it's a narrow driveway. You're gonna have limited space at the other end of that grassy area to turn around. How's that traffic going to be managed?
That is a fair question, and that was a concern mentioned by the engineer. I don't know what traffic is like on 60th Street, so I can't attest to that, whether pickup or drop-off
But the
could
drop-off
occur.
can be also in the front area too, because there's
Okay.
a door right there, so it doesn't, has to be the driveway part, they can drop off the front entrance too as well.
Is there parking on 60th in front of the
Yes.
building? Okay.
And 60th is a busy street.
Yeah, pretty busy.
Busy, depending on time of day, yeah.
But Greenfield's a busy street, and we have the same thing right
Yeah.
on Greenfield. So I don't necessarily foresee that. I think my biggest issue was where they were gonna get dropped off, or when they can get, you know, because if they're going all the way in the back and coming out, that probably wouldn't work. But if you have it like maybe,
Where's that?
I don't know, sectioned off, saying drop off, 5 minutes, whatever, out you go, in and out, in and out, in and out. That would be more feasible, right?
It's the same site, like you said, on Greenfield, 'cause I'm on 94th and right on, trying to think, what is it?
It's 100.
90. It's right before the freeway on-ramp.
Yeah.
There's a daycare on the right
99th
side.
Street?
Yeah, yeah. And everybody pulls up and drops off on Greenfield in the parking
Right there.
lane there, and it's fine. I drive by it every morning. I don't,
Emily, you have an aerial view?
An aerial, yes.
how many vehicles do you expect to be in that driveway at one time? I mean, how many pickups and drop-offs are occurring at one time?
It should just be one drop off at one time. Cause you also have
What-
school buses, like some kids might get dropped off from school, off the bus, but that would be in the front area. In front of the building.
So parents are also dropping off, correct?
Yeah, some parents may be dropping off, yes.
Or picking up.
Or big-
I mean, it just looks so congested, and you're coming off a busy street.
The side streets are also, I guess, opportunities. I mean, there's street parking on 60th, Washington Street, Scott Street.
Right.
So I mean, there's the ability if parents are dropping off to, to pull up, park legally and on Scott or Washington Street and then walk, use the sidewalk, and walk the kids up.
Or
Yeah.
is the sidewalk on the north end of 1112 or on the south end of 1112? 60th.
It's,
I feel like the north end is wider.
yeah, the north side is the drive that
That's
goes
the
back
drive-through
to the
or the
parking
alley.
lot behind the building. So behind the 1112 building is the, I guess is that turnaround area
Yeah.
or the play area and turnaround.
And is there a possibility to go north to get to Washington Street from that parking lot, or is that parking lot?
No, it's not possible. There's a little bit of a grade difference where that Broken Star Saloon is. There's a retaining wall where those cars are
Okay.
parked, and
Okay.
there wouldn't be, there's not currently a through.
I'm just trying to think if there's any other way to get, have just like a one-way loop lane.
Yes, thank you. Steve, have you and your staff looked at that property? You looked at this driveway issue that we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're comfortable?
It's zoned appropriately for a daycare. It does function, it has functioned as a parking lot in the past for, the artistic studio. And I guess with any parent, they could, if they're dropping off their kids, they can choose to pull in that driveway and park and drop off, or use the street, or, any of either of the side streets to, park. There's options, I guess. It's not, the parking lot's not the only
Right.
option to use when
It
parking.
just seems to me that we've got vulnerable children. These are young people, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's not much room for maneuverability. And
There's young children also would be, staff that would be outside to get them off the van. That's why the back part is also gonna be gated, for the safety of the kids, the back driveway.
thank you.
I would also assume that since it's so narrow, it's not, they would race through that, hopefully pretty fast. It would be more of a slow crawl to get through there so they don't wreck their own vehicle.
Right.
And then, yeah, so how many spots in front? Is that like 2 or 3 spots that you have in front of it?
It would be about 3 spots. I parked up there to take the images of the site.
Are those
Okay.
dedicated to the building then, or is that just public?
No,
parking?
it's
So
it's public access
What if those
parking.
are parked up during?
I can only speak for the time that I was there,
Yeah,
granted,
I'm
which is
just
like
saying, like,
2 in the afternoon or so.
How far right is it, like just right around the block? How many, to park on the side streets?
Oh, how far away is the
Like
Washington?
Oh,
Yeah,
Oh, they're
you know
very
what I mean?
close.
Is it- I
Maybe-
can't see from here, so I'm
I mean, the
sorry.
distance between Washington and Scott might be like, I'm gonna guess, 400 feet.
So, and then there's parking around the other side there too, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well.
quite
that-
frankly,
That kinda solves that, in my opinion. The driveway thing, maybe use it for employee only. That might be another option to make sure that people don't go back and forth.
Remind me how many students you're hoping to?
I don't know. At my other building I had, it was 51st, 52nd, so,
Okay.
I don't
I'm
know.
sorry, how many?
51st, 52nd.
And
But usually you'll never get that far up, but yeah, that's the capacity. I don't know what it is over on 60th though. I won't know until
Well,
the
then
state
if you
comes
have-
out.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. If you have more people, you need more employees
Mhm.
also, correct? Because
Correct.
there's like that ratio you have to maintain. It's been a long time.
I just,
yeah.
I was just gonna make a comment, because I know that part of 60th Street really well, because people fly through that section. And, it's kind of a dangerous part of 60th Street with the traffic. And that's just a concern of mine, because people use that parking lane as a driving lane as well, too. So, which is why I just bringing that up as a concern. But if they could use Washington Street, I think that'd be a safer option. Or if that alleyway was a little bit bigger, I think I could see that as a safer option as well for the kids to be dropped off.
We also need daycares for people to work.
I think those are fair considerations, and I think the safety concerns are valid. I think through the potential inclusion of a lighting plan and potential, signage about temporary parking in front of the building, I think that could alleviate some of those concerns. And while I do agree the driveway is really narrow, I don't think there's much they can do in the way of widening it at this point. It is just a really tight spot. But the block is really short. I walked the block, and it's really, really quite close to Washington. Quite frankly, I didn't even notice the building in between Broken Star and 1112. So it would really easily be accessible in that way. But I agree, maybe signage, maybe appropriate lighting could help alleviate some of those concerns.
Wayne?
Yes, thank you. Who's going to maintain the driveway? And there's a heavy storm, a lot of snow. Who's going to remove all that?
No, I have a maintenance guy that will do the snow.
You have.
Yeah.
So to deal with these concerns that are being raised, how can that be worked into this approval?
So we do have the recommendation of the lighting plan. We could, well, Steve, I'm not gonna say we can without checking with you first, but potentially we could require some form of a temporary sign for parking in front of the building. I'm not 100% on that,
Possibly a
though.
loading zone. could
Loading
be-
zone.
Could be requested, yeah.
Developers would wanna do that.
Okay.
15-minute parking for a spot or two.
Yeah. I wouldn't solve, if everybody shows up at once, it's gonna be
Yeah.
congestion.
If every pickup leaves work at
Yeah.
5 o'clock and gets there at 5:15,
Yeah,
it'll be
you don't
messy.
have to-
Mm.
Yeah.
But from the safety perspective of people parking directly on 60th, that would help make things a little bit safer. And if there's not spots in the front, they could park on Washington or on Scott.
I think as parents will get comfortable to how it operates, they'll learn their routines. At least that's what I remember.
I would always wait till about 7 o'clock, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
6 o'clock. Die down.
Last kid. Oh, here comes the
Yeah,
shit.
oh, here he comes again.
Oh,
Oh, can you go back?
One more time.
Which one?
Up
One
the
more.
front,
Yes.
there.
Yep.
So that's an apartment building or what? Looks like housing.
From what I could gather, yeah.
Okay,
But they don't share a lot in the back at all.
okay. So one,
So is this the driveway here to the left?
yes.
Correct.
And that looks like at least 3 parking spots in front.
Yeah. So there could be a loading zone for unloading, offloading of parents, kids, in that area.
And where do you go to get that approval?
Through our engineering department, and they would post it, it'd be on a council agenda.
So could we incorporate that in this process?
Yes.
Well, if the older people want it,
Yeah,
yeah.
at least share our concerns.
Yeah.
Oh.
And there'd be lighting on the outside is what we're talking about for the lighting plan, like.
Right, that is what we're looking to see, just because in my mind, the hours of operation extend, till 10 p.m. I'm thinking of winter when it gets dark at 5, 6 o'clock. It would be appropriate, given the context,
Yep.
so.
All right.
Well, I have concerns, I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Are there any other discussion, comments, questions? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Congratulations,
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
and good luck.
Thank you.
Our next step is what, common council, what date did we have?
I think we're
17th?
looking at the 17th for Common Council.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
call me if you need anything.
Okay.
All right, move on to item 4, Spirit Halloween.
All right.
for staff.
Yeah, so we're just looking at a pretty simple, straightforward sign appeal for Spirit of Halloween. They recently submitted a signage proposal to us for 2 signs, a larger and a smaller sign. The smaller of the signs is about 16 square feet, and the larger occupies 112 square feet. However, this sign was previously approved. The location of the site is 6731 West Greenfield Avenue, so if you're familiar with the Pick and Save there, it's just one of those ancillary buildings to the north of that. The proposed use for that building generally is general retail, so appropriate for a spirit of Halloween. And then the building size itself is 17,700 square feet. In terms of conformity, this is why we are bringing this sign to you folks to review today. The sign exceeds our 32 square foot limit for temporary signage. So they did apply for a temporary sign and a temporary occupancy of the building. In terms of the precedent for why we think it may be allowed, the larger sign was previously approved at a different location, 11135 West National Avenue. The sign is the exact same, the building location is just moving. So here's just a brief site plan here of what that would look like. And then that was what they submitted to us for what the sign would look like on the building. For our recommendation, we did speak with building inspections, Dan Adamczyk, to get his perspective on the matter as well. And given the fact that there is previous precedent for the approval of the sign, the building context is there. It's a pretty large building that could accommodate the sign, and the sign, given its size, would look still contextually appropriate on this building. And the temporary nature of both the signage and the occupancy, we think that this would be appropriate still at a new site. So we are asking for approval of the sign appeal for Spirit of Halloween without any further conditions. Yes.
We should note that the other building where the large sign appeared was that building next to Home Depot, which is a big building, but this is temporary, and I move approval.
Second.
You gotta be quicker, Jessica. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? Other than the fact it's kind of sad to think about Halloween already.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries, so we'll move on to item 5.
Thank you, Mayor.
Flood control.
Steve, you were allocated a 20-minute meeting, and you've already exceeded it.
Staff is recommending approval of item number 5. Option 1 is our preferred option. So if there are any questions, I mean, this is a little more complicated ordinance that I've dealt with. But I mean, we currently, the city maintains a floodplain ordinance in Chapter 12. FEMA, federal government, and the state feds actually, FEMA has prepared new maps, new flood insurance rate maps. That's what the firm maps are, or the firm thing is. And then we're charged also with updating our ordinance, our floodplain ordinance, to meet, the federal Code of Federal Regulations, Part 60.3D of the federal code, to be in compliance by October 24th. So we've been at work with that, with our city attorney's office and with the DNR of the state and Representative FEMA to make that happen. They've prepared a model ordinance for us, which we're currently taking a look at with our city attorney's office, and going to be making a little more simplicity, hopefully, to it. It's the model ordinance that the state gave us is very wordy and just a bit hard to understand. So we're going to try to get just to the essence of that with this model ordinance. So this is just an example of one of the flood insurance rate maps here. You can see the different zones. This area here with the sort of blue and red hatch, that's the actual floodway. So the actual creek, in this case, the southern branch of the Underwood Creek area, is actually high, or in this area here where it's deemed to be flooding. This is actually Greenfield Park here, Greenfield Avenue. So nothing can get built within this area. Further up here in this zone, this other area here, this lighter color, there's a 1% chance of flooding in this area. This area can actually be built upon or within, and there are actually some homes within this area that may or may not carry flood insurance, but those structures are have been built prior to our current ordinance, and can certainly be, people can continue to live there. But in our floodplain ordinance, current one actually covers that, and you can make repairs, you can do certain maintenance to do buildings within this area. However, if it exceeds 50% of the value of the home over the, the current equalized value, over the lifetime of repairs, then, you run into an issue where you can't go any further, and it has to either be brought into a conforming status, or you just can't, you can't make repairs. And that puts property owners in a little bit of a predicament. So the new floodplain ordinance, and these, I guess before I'll get into what the new one says, but these are just the flood insurance rate maps. That'll go into effect on October 24th. They're being renumbered a little bit, so we've got the different areas, the firm panels here, they call them. The ones in West Dallas are part of 64, and then 68, 69, 88, part of 151, 132, 131, and then a small part of 27, 127. So there are about 7 in total within Milwaukee, and this is the overall Milwaukee County area. So everybody in Milwaukee County, all communities in Milwaukee County are subject to these updates with FEMA, and are kind of going through the same thing to bring their ordinances into compliance by the 24th date. We're in that same boat. Taking a closer look at West Dallas, this is just one, I'm just showing an example of the flood insurance rate map panel. This is that section of the sliver here. It sort of straddles Waukesha County, New Berlin here, with this small part of West Dallas here. And you can see the Underwood Creek Parkway, coming down here. This is the actual creek, the floodway district. Nothing is built within that area, and nothing happens to be built within this other 1% chance area here either. It just happens to be county land in this area. Further south, this is a sort of a newer area that's been delineated by FEMA within Greenfield Park. I don't know if you've ever golfed there, but sometimes it can be wet within these areas. It's another water hazard. But and then taking another look at, this is I believe this is 131 area, so part of like Orchard Hills in this area. So Morgan Avenue on the south here. The yellow line delineates the city boundary, so you have the Morgan Oaks apartments, and you've got the Root River Parkway, and then further north here is what is this? Oklahoma Avenue, where it meets National. But you can see the areas where the Root River actually exists. That's the actual channel here, and then this is the hatched areas, the floodway district. And then you've got some higher areas, and then a little bit higher, the blue areas here. But typically nothing is built within this floodway district. Nothing could be allowed per our ordinance. But in some cases, within some of these blue areas, or even these 1% areas, you do have development. And the whole purpose of the ordinance is really to sort of create those standards for repairs, what can be altered, what can be changed, what can be built within these areas. We certainly don't want to encourage development within wet areas, as it represents a liability. However, in the case where we have properties that have been built within some of these fringe areas, the ordinance does allow a certain amount of repairs. And with the new ordinance that we're looking to enact prior to October 24th, there's 2 options. There's one with a state statute that's recently been adopted called Act 175, or without. That's really the big difference with the new ordinance. Otherwise, pretty much all the standards are essentially the same. Option 1, which is what we're recommending be incorporated into our new ordinance, addresses a statutory requirement within the state statutes that basically says that with that 175 option, it will allow property owners to make improvements to exceed the statutory 50% rule of assessed value for non-conforming structures within a floodplain. So it's more homeowner friendly, more property owner friendly, I should say, in the case of commercial or industrial properties that happen to be within a fringe area. And then it would allow for certain modifications or alterations, repairs, and maintenance to existing non-conforming structures within those areas. So a lot of words here, but I guess it just gets back to that whole idea of with an ordinance with that 175 just allows for an exception to the state's otherwise 50%, sort of somewhat restrictive 50% rule. So, which is a cost-based regulation. So it allows for some change to that. So with that, while structures could be modified with that option imposed within a new ordinance, they could be modified to meet the requirements of the state statute and transformed into, or they're not necessarily transformed into conforming structures. They're still considered non-conforming, but are subject to all the other non-cost-based restrictions, building permits, as well as our flood control district requirements, which require, certain base flood elevation, above the wet area, and some other protections. So I guess what we end up with at the, with the ordinance amendment is that we have potentially two types of non-conforming structures. Non-conforming structures that do not meet the minimum requirements of the state's rule, or non-conforming structures that I guess are no longer subject to the state's 50% rule. So, and with that, I guess we're recommending approval, and I guess I'm happy to answer any questions at this point. I know it's a little bit complex and probably difficult to hear, for the first time, but we do have, a number of the flood rate maps. I could dive into those if you want to take a look at different areas of the city or different aspects of the ordinance. Thank you. Questions?
Wayne?
Steve, has the city attorney made a comment about this?
Other than just offering his assistance with going through the model ordinance of the state and federal government, trying to make it a little easier to read. So I appreciate his help on all of this.
And does he have a position on which?
He hasn't shared that yet with me, other than with respect to the two options. It's ultimately up to the Common Council which option they prefer and what type of path they want to take. But we're recommending the more property owner friendly version with potential for an exception to that 50% rule. Now, council could certainly take a harder line and say, no, we want to update the ordinance, but we don't want to have that option for homeowners to exceed the 50%, in which case, if there was a loss.
So this won't be presented to the council members until?
September 17th will be presented to the city council at a public hearing, and then after which time, they could either choose to adopt it or adopt it with conditions or changes, or reject it and tell us to go back and change it. We'll come back with something else.
Approval of what you're recommending.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
So that means that you are recommending that Act 175 be incorporated into the ordinance?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, then I second you.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Ayes
Happy
have it,
Labor
motion
Day.
carries. Everybody, got a motion or a blessing?
I'll second the adjournment.
All right.
Motion to adjourn, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.